I wake up to the sound of my phone buzzing beside the bed, its light casting an artificial glow against the gray morning. My fingers move on instinct, tapping through the usual string of emails and calendar reminders. There, it is an automatic receipt confirming the rent transfer. Full amount. Again. I glance at the balance in my account, subtracting the payment almost without thinking. Then comes the text. Hey, honey, could you send another 100? Jason said the baby's formula is getting low again. Thanks. Love you. I stare at the message longer than I should. It's not the first time, and it won't be the last. My thumb hovers over the keyboard. I want to ask why Jason, who hasn't worked a full week in over a year, can't buy his own baby's formula. But I don't. I never do. I place the phone face down on the table and press my palms against my forehead as if I could press the thought of my family out of my mind entirely. The radiator clicks faintly from across the room, heat struggling to rise through the rust-colored coils. It's always this way near the end of the month, just enough warmth to remind me that I'm paying for it, not enough to feel it. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment on the east side of Milwaukee, 15 minutes from my office if the buses run on time. The same apartment Marcus used to live in for free. Now it's mine and I pay for every inch of it. Rent, utilities, groceries, quiet. All mine, except it doesn't feel like it anymore. When I moved in, it felt like a step toward freedom. I'd just accepted a full-time position as a financial assistant downtown. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable, and stability had always been my currency. I had this plan mapped out in my head: pay down my student loans, build up a cushion, maybe even take a vacation for once. Nothing extravagant. Just somewhere with blue sky and no one who knew my last name. But things shifted so fast I barely noticed. It started when my brother's girlfriend moved in with their newborn. They needed a place, my mom said, just for a little while. Jason needed time to get on his feet. I understood. Of course I did. I cleaned out the spare room, packed away the small desk I used for evening classes, and set up a quiet corner for the crib. Then came the toys, the stroller, the diapers stacked by the front door. I never said no. Maybe I should have. But every time I opened my mouth, I could already hear the reply: "You're the responsible one. You understand how hard it is right now. I've been responsible since I was 15. I paid for my textbooks and quarters and bus rides with crumpled bills. I skipped birthday dinners so Marcus could have new cleats or a better laptop. And somehow, even after all that, it never occurred to anyone that I might need space too." A sticky note clings to the fridge, curling at the corners. My mother's handwriting is careful cursive. "Don't forget Parker's appointment Friday. Call in advance to make sure it's still covered. Parker's not my son." I remind myself every day, but I take him to doctor visits, refill bottles, pick up groceries while Chelsea's out getting her hair done. They say thank you sometimes, but mostly they act like it's expected. I sink into the sofa, pulling the blanket over my lap. The fabric still smells faintly like baby lotion and sour milk. I used to love this blanket, gray and soft, the kind of thing that made the apartment feel like mine when I moved in. Now, it's just one more thing I share without being asked. My name is the only one on the lease, but it doesn't matter. What's mine never really stays mine when it comes to this family. They call it helping out, lending a hand, being part of something. But I don't remember when the line between support and surrender got so blurred. I pay rent on time every month. I fix the things that break. I do the dishes when no one else does. I haven't had a weekend to myself in months, and now they're asking for more. I open my laptop, the screen flickering to life. A familiar folder sits on the desktop, Freedom. It's where I keep my budgeting sheets housing search history and lease draft templates. I haven't opened it in over a year. Part of me thought I could make it work here. I thought that maybe if I gave enough, they'd finally see me. Maybe they'd say thank you and mean it. The apartment listing website loads slowly. I filter by price, by distance from the office, by units without roommates. I click through photos, none of them are perfect, but I don't need perfect. I need quiet. I need space that belongs to me and no one else. The wind rattles the window pane. I hear Parker's soft wail through the bedroom wall, then Marcus's voice telling him to shush. There's no apology, no acknowledgement that I've worked all week or that I'll be up in 4 hours to catch the first bus again. I listen anyway. I always do. Another ping sounds on my phone. Another message from Mom. "Thanks again for covering this month's rent. Jason and Chelsea are lucky to have you. Let's talk about February soon. There's no mention of me. No question about how I'm holding up. Just an assumption I'll say yes again. But I'm not going to. I type in my name for a showing tomorrow afternoon. It's a small place, third floor, no elevator, but it has a lock, a working heater, and enough space for a desk and a chair. That's more than I've had in a long time. I close the laptop slowly, exhaling through my nose. There's no anger left, just a dull awareness. They've taken what they wanted and called it love. They've handed me invoices and called them gratitude. Rent is just a word until someone decides it means everything. Tonight I won't fight about it, I won't explain, I'll just begin. Because some exits don't come with doors slamming or voices raised. Some start quietly with a search bar and a half-packed bag. And this time I won't be leaving pieces of myself behind. I think I always knew I wasn't the favorite. Even as a child, I could feel it in the way silence followed my good news while applause followed Marcus's. He was 4 years older than me, and from the beginning it was as if he arrived already pre-approved for greatness. When he hummed along to the radio at age 7, Mom decided he was musically gifted. By 10, he had a drum set, private voice lessons, and an entire corner of the house cleared out and labeled Marcus's studio. I once asked for a watercolor set and a weekend art class at the community center. Mom smiled, touched my shoulder, and said we'd have to wait for a better time. The next morning, a brand new condenser microphone arrived in the mail for Marcus. That moment stayed with me for years. I still remember the paper I'd filled out myself, my name carefully written in block letters, the parent signature line left blank. I had clipped my best painting to the back, a park with lopsided trees and a lavender sky. I'd even circled the box that said scholarship option available. That evening, I stood in the kitchen doorway waiting for Mom to finish rinsing the dishes. I held out the paper with both hands. She glanced at it, said, "Sweetheart, maybe next semester," then returned to drying plates. She didn't even ask what I'd painted. I folded the paper and tucked it into my desk drawer behind old spelling tests and stickers I no longer cared about. I never brought it up again. It wasn't defiance, it was practice. Practicing how to silence myself early so no one else would have to do it for me. That became a skill I carried for the rest of my life. At school, I kept my head down. I made straight A's, but no one taped my report cards to the fridge. If a teacher praised me, Mom would nod and say, "She's quiet." Easy. If the same teacher complimented Marcus, brilliant, expressive, so full of potential, my mother would tell the neighbors, and my father would say, "That boy's going places." I used to wonder what place I was going to, maybe just to the bus stop and back. When Marcus entered high school, the household changed completely. My father installed new soundproofing in the basement to turn it into a studio. My mother rearranged the family budget to pay for production software mixers and private mentorship. They said it was because his music teacher saw something special in him. What did they see in me? A budget liability. A placeholder daughter. I began to ask for less, not because I didn't want things, but because I got tired of watching the ask disappear into the ether. I was 14 when I got my first job. Marcus had just left for college with a music scholarship and a fully furnished apartment. There was a quiet in the house after he left, but it didn't fill the spaces he once occupied, it just made the imbalance feel louder. I knew I needed money. Not for luxuries, just for breathing room. I asked around, and finally my grandparents, my father's parents, offered me work at their antique shop on the edge of town. The first day I arrived, Grandpa looked me over, handed me a dust cloth, and pointed to a wall of books covered in grime. "If you can handle the smell and don't mind slow days, the place is yours," he said. That was it. No big welcome. Just an open door and a chance to prove myself. It was more than anyone else had given me. The antique store wasn't much, just 2 rooms packed with history. Books in one corner, shelves of glassware, and clocks in another. Most of the time, no one came in. I spent my hours cleaning, labeling, rearranging dusty displays, and occasionally helping Grandma ring up a customer. But I loved it. I loved the creaky wooden floors and the smell of old wood mixed with peppermint oil from Grandma's tea. I loved the quiet and the fact that every item had a story. Nothing in that shop was new, but all of it mattered. One afternoon, as I was cataloging a stack of black and white photographs, Grandma handed me a grilled cheese sandwich and sat beside me. She watched me work in silence, then said softly, You may not be the center of someone else's world, but don't forget you're the whole sky in your own. I didn't say anything, but I remembered those words. I think I always will. That store became my first real home, not the place where I slept, but the place where I felt seen. No one there compared me to Marcus. No one asked why I wasn't more like someone else. My grandparents weren't warm in a traditional sense, but they gave me something I didn't know. I was desperate for acknowledgement. Quiet, steady trust. I worked there after school every weekday for nearly 3 years. I saved every penny. Bought my own books, my own bus pass, even paid part of the household utilities when our water bill spiked. My parents told me I was responsible, but they said it like it was a personality flaw, like being dependable was just another way to be forgettable. Sometimes I'd sit on the bus with my work uniform still smelling of wood polish, watching the houses go by, wondering if any of the kids from school had ever ridden these routes. I doubted it. Marcus had a car before he even passed his road test. Me, I took the 36 westbound and carried pepper spray just in case. At night, I'd go home to dishes in the sink and laundry piled by the bathroom door. If I was lucky, there'd be leftovers. If not, I'd make instant noodles and eat quietly at the counter while Mom told me about Marcus's latest showcase. He says Boston feels like the right fit, she said once. That city appreciates talent. She didn't mean it cruelly, but I felt the blade of it anyway. I applied to college without telling anyone. I knew they wouldn't contribute. I filled out FAFSA forms on my own, wrote scholarship essays between shifts, asked my English teacher to proofread them during her lunch break. When the acceptance letter arrived, I printed it out and taped it to my bedroom door. Nobody asked about it. Not a single person knocked on my door to say congratulations. By then, I'd stopped hoping they would. I moved out for college at 17, taking a suitcase, a stack of used textbooks, and my watercolor portfolio. I never got the chance to develop my art. I still painted sometimes on quiet Sundays or sleepless nights, but it became something private, something without an audience, like most of me. Even now, all these years later, I sometimes think back to that community center application. It wasn't just about the class. It was a test. One I didn't even know I was taking until it failed to matter. Marcus got music. I got quiet. And from that silence, I built my life layer by layer like shelves in a forgotten store, each one holding a piece of who I became. Because sometimes when no one sees you, you learn how to see everything. And when no one hands you a place in the world, you make one anyway. I was 22 when my brother got married at a lakeside resort in Vermont. The kind of place with champagne on arrival and a live band flown in from another state. I was still in school working 20 hours a week at the campus cafe and another 10 tutoring freshmen in accounting just to cover rent and textbooks. My schedule was a color-coded maze of lectures, work shifts, and library blocks. My meals were often toast or cup noodles. But I smiled through it when Mom asked if I could help with wedding prep. "It'll be good for you to take part in something joyful," she said. They took out a second mortgage to fund the event. I only found out because I overheard my mom talking to the florist over speakerphone while scrubbing dishes one night. "Yes, we've rearranged everything. The venue is locked. Now we just need the roses and hydrangeas to match the bridesmaid gowns." She was glowing, her voice high with excitement. I stood silently behind her with a sponge in my hand, wondering if they even remembered I was still a student trying to finish school without a dime of their support. The bridesmaid dress arrived in a large box 2 weeks before the wedding. It was folded, neatly wrapped in tissue-soft pink satin that shimmered under the kitchen light. I pulled out the receipt tucked in the side pocket, $348. I looked up and asked, "Am I paying for this myself?" My mom didn't even look up from her phone. "You're an adult now, Emma. It's your responsibility. I've had enough on my plate just handling the band." I nodded and said nothing. That night, I opened my credit card app and made the payment. It was my largest expense that month. I ate peanut butter toast for dinner 3 nights in a row to stay under budget. The dress hung in my closet beside my work uniform so pristine it looked like it belonged to someone else. Marcus's wedding was as extravagant as promised. A choreographed ceremony on the terrace, champagne towers, ice sculptures, glittering lights strung from the oaks like something out of a movie. I stood at the edge of it all, smiling in photos, raising my glass at toasts, clapping for speeches. I wore the dress. I played the part. No one saw how I missed the bus the night before and walked 2 miles in flats through wet pavement just to get home. No one asked how many extra shifts I picked up to cover the cost of a single gown. At the reception, I helped Grandma wash champagne flutes in the service area while everyone else danced. She looked at me and said, "You hold yourself well, Emma. But I see you. Not for the dress or the smile. For how you don't complain even when it's deserved." Her voice was low, her eyes warm but tired. That was the only compliment I received the entire evening. A week later, my semester results came in. I had made the dean's list again, a 4.0 GPA. I took a screenshot and texted it to the family group chat. No one responded. Later that day, I received a message from Mom, "Well done." That was all. No phone call, no card, not even a "we're proud of you." At dinner that weekend, the conversation centered on Marcus's new condo in Connecticut. He had been offered a position in his wife's family business. I sat there pushing green beans across my plate, thinking maybe I could have won a Nobel and they still would have handed me the check for my own party. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just overlooked. I was a background fixture only visible when something needed cleaning, signing, or paying. I stopped expecting anything from them, and I stopped sharing wins. I closed the family chat and moved most of my updates to a private folder on my laptop. It was named Freedom. Inside were spreadsheets, budgets, saved job listings, notes on apartments. Every cell I filled was a step away from their orbit. My Freedom account started with $36. That's all I had left after bills one month. But it grew, slowly, dollar by dollar, week by week. I clipped coupons, skipped outings, sold old textbooks. Any extra tip I got at the cafe went into that account. It wasn't just a fund, it was a declaration. A quiet, private promise that one day I would build a life where no one handed me a bill wrapped in a smile. At work, I picked up extra shifts whenever I could. I learned to manage fatigue like a second major, sleep in 3-hour blocks, study during coffee breaks, review notes on the bus. There was no room to slip. I told myself it would all be worth it when I had a key to a space no one else claimed no one else could take. Meanwhile, Marcus's life unfolded like a brochure. Social media posts of weekend brunches, work retreats, a new baby stroller with faux leather trim. My mom gushed over every update. "He's doing so well. They're really building a future." She never once asked if I needed anything, never once offered help. Maybe she assumed I didn't need it. Maybe she didn't think to ask. But that assumption that I was fine, that I'd managed, that I could shoulder everything without recognition was the real weight. It wasn't the bills or the overtime. It was the silence, the invisibility, the way my effort was expected but never acknowledged, not even once. I used to think being the stable one was a compliment, that it meant strength. Now I know it just meant I was convenient, easy to lean on, easy to leave out. The Freedom account grew to 4 digits by the time Marcus posted about their baby moon in Florida. I saw the post while waiting for the espresso machine to heat up at the cafe. They were lying on beach chairs, laughing, sunglasses pushed up on their heads. The caption read, "Grateful for a village that makes this possible." I closed the app. My village was me, and that would have to be enough. That night, I added another entry to my spreadsheet. Goal: leave quietly, without debt, without permission. I didn't write it for drama. I wrote it because I needed the reminder that there would never be a right time or a clear invitation to choose myself. I'd have to do it without applause. Because my brother got a wedding, I got a bill, but bills can be paid, and some debts like silence can only be broken by walking away. The apartment had been sitting empty for months by the time I asked about it. It was the same place Marcus had lived in during college, a 2-bedroom unit just 15 minutes from my new job downtown. I knew it well, visited him there more than once, usually to drop off something our mother sent, or to clean up after one of his parties. When I brought it up over dinner, the request was simple. If no one's using Marcus's old apartment, I'd like to move in. My mom looked up from her phone and exchanged a glance with my dad. Then came her answer, flat and unbothered. "If you want to live there, you'll need to pay rent." The words landed heavier than they should have. I blinked, confused. But Marcus didn't pay rent. I wasn't trying to stir anything, just pointing out the obvious. My dad folded his newspaper and looked up without blinking. Financially, things are different now. We just took out a loan for his wedding and we can't afford to support two people. I nodded, swallowing whatever I might have said. Of course things were different. They always were when it came to me. I agreed to pay half the market rate, which at the time still felt like a win. I figured living close to work would make the grind easier. I could sleep more, save time on the commute, maybe even have a few quiet evenings. I moved in on a Saturday. The walls still had faint tape marks where Marcus's posters had hung, and there was a cigarette burn on the carpet in the corner left over from a party he threw 2 years ago. No one had bothered to fix it. I didn't complain. That first year was brutal. I was juggling a full-time entry-level job at a financial firm, plus a side gig doing data entry for a tax service that operated out of a strip mall. I woke up every day at 5:30, took the first bus downtown, clocked in by 7:30, and usually got home close to 9 p.m. Most nights I ate leftovers or toast, stared at the ceiling for 20 minutes, and fell asleep fully dressed. Every first of the month I transferred the rent without fail. On time, never short. I kept a screenshot of every confirmation just in case. It became a ritual: open the banking app, confirm the amount, wait for the success checkmark to appear, then close the screen before thinking too hard. It felt like I was feeding a machine that never said thank you. I remember the month I got sick, a low-grade fever that wouldn't break dizziness so bad I nearly fainted on the bus. I missed 2 shifts and still made the rent on time. My mom texted to ask if I was okay. When I said I was just getting over the flu, she replied, "Hope you feel better soon. By the way, your father's car registration is due. Can you help with the fee?" I said yes. My work badge started to fray around the edges from daily use. The plastic cracked where the clip dug in. I meant to ask for a replacement but never did. I wore it anyway. It felt like the most honest thing about me, scratched up, functional, expected to keep going. The apartment became a place to collapse, not to live. I never decorated. I kept the lights off in the second bedroom most days. Sometimes I'd catch myself staring at the ceiling fan, wondering how long it had been since I'd done something just because I wanted to. Not because someone needed me, not because it made financial sense. After a few months, I started to notice a shift. My parents stopped asking how I was doing. Instead, the questions became financial. Have you started contributing to the family insurance plan? Can you help cover the garbage collection for your grandmother's house? I felt like an ATM that also answered emails. And I played along. I told myself it was temporary. Then came the promotion. I had only been at the firm for 7 months when my supervisor called me in. She praised my organization, my calm under pressure, and offered me a raise along with a new title, assistant project manager. I didn't tell anyone at first. It felt too fragile to share. But that weekend, I made the mistake of mentioning it over brunch with my parents. I said it quietly between bites of dry toast. I've been promoted. It's more responsibility, but the pay increase helps. My mother's eyes lit up, not with pride, but with calculation. "That's great," she said, smiling. "So starting next month, you can pay full rent." I froze. I thought we agreed on half until I got more settled. She waved a hand like she was brushing away smoke. That was before. "You're stable now. Big company. Good salary. You'll manage." I didn't argue. I just nodded and went home. That night, I sat on the floor with my laptop and reopened my budget spreadsheet. I reworked every column, adjusted every expense. I made it work. I always made it work. But something in me shifted, not from the cost, but from what it confirmed. My value wasn't based on love or loyalty. It was transactional, conditional. I was useful as long as I was paying. That next month, I sent the full amount, not $1 short. I waited for someone to say thank you. No one did. I waited for a moment of recognition. It never came. One evening after a 12-hour day, I came home to a dead phone battery and a fridge with 2 eggs and half a lemon. My phone lit up after charging 3 messages from my mom. The first, just checking if rent came through. The second, "Can you help Chelsea find a pediatrician near the apartment?" The third, "Also, Jason said the utility bill is high this month. Can you handle that too?" I didn't answer right away. I just sat on the couch, letting the weight of the day sink in. The cushions had lost their shape. The screen on my phone was cracked in the corner, a spider web that spread a little more each week. I looked at it like it could explain something to me. I wasn't living. I was absorbing, carrying, enduring. And the people I called family saw me not as a person but as an extension of their convenience. I once believed that being strong meant being available, that being stable meant being the one everyone leaned on, but stability without reciprocity isn't strength, it's servitude. And I was finally starting to feel the cost. It started with a phone call I almost didn't answer. I had just finished a long meeting and was sitting in my car outside the grocery store, still holding my coffee, now lukewarm. My mom's name flashed on the screen. I picked up expecting the usual, a question about rent or a favor for someone else. But her voice was different, more rushed, a little breathless. "Emma, we need to talk about Marcus." I stayed silent, waiting. She launched in. His company in Connecticut had collapsed. Some issue with finances, overspending, and Chelsea's family was livid. They were moving out of their house, and it wasn't clear who would get custody of the baby if things didn't settle soon. "They need a place to stay," she said, "just for a while. And your apartment has the most space." It took a second to register. "You're planning to move them in here." She hesitated, then added, "Of course you'll keep paying rent, like usual." My hand tightened on the cup. "They're not paying anything." "They can't not right now," she said gently. "They're going through a lot. You're stable, Emma. You've always understood." I didn't say anything, just hung up and stared out the windshield. 3 days later, they arrived. A full carload of luggage, a crib toys, boxes of diapers, and Marcus's espresso machine, shiny, expensive, and completely unnecessary. Chelsea didn't say hello. She walked through the door like she owned the place, eyeing the living room, the kitchen, the hallway, making comments under her breath. "This will do for now," she said. My mom followed behind, barely making eye contact, giving soft instructions like she was directing movers. She walked into my bedroom, took one look around, and said, "This room is quiet enough for Parker. Emma, you can sleep on the sofa, just for a little while." I stood still. I'm the one paying for this apartment. "You're not being fair," she said quickly. "Babies need a stable environment. Don't you understand?" The words didn't land like an argument. They landed like a rule already written. I nodded, moved my things quietly into the living room that night, folded the same blanket I used when I first moved in and laid it across the couch. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just lay there in the dim glow of the kitchen light, listening to the creak of Parker's crib as Chelsea adjusted the sheets. The next morning, I got up early, just like always. Caught the bus, finished my reports, stayed late to finish a proposal. I came home to a pile of dishes in the sink and the faint sound of music playing from Marcus's phone. Chelsea had rearranged the pantry. My groceries were gone, replaced by organic toddler snacks and espresso pods. I found an empty carton of eggs in the trash and my favorite cereal already half-eaten. When I asked about it, Marcus waved a hand. "You've got a good job, right? You don't mind, do you?" I didn't answer, just opened a can of soup and heated it in the microwave. Every night was the same. Chelsea on calls in the kitchen, Parker's baby monitor buzzing near my head even though they were in the next room. Marcus watching old videos of himself on YouTube, the volume always a little too loud. I stopped reading, stopped writing in my notebook. My sleep came in pieces, 30 minutes here, an hour there, interrupted by crying door slams or the hiss of milk warming on the stove. I paid every bill. Rent, water, electricity. The heating spiked after Parker started crawling, and Chelsea insisted the apartment stay warm at night. I covered it without question. When the trash overflowed, I took it out. When the toilet clogged, I fixed it. No one thanked me. They barely acknowledged I was doing anything at all. One night after working a 14-hour day, I came home to find Chelsea sitting at my desk using my laptop. "Just needed to order some things for the baby," she said casually. "I hope you don't mind." I said nothing, just waited until she got up, then wiped the keyboard with a tissue and shut the lid. I started keeping my headphones in even when I wasn't listening to anything, just to carve out some kind of boundary. My evenings disappeared into chores. Grocery runs, laundry, wiping down countertops sticky with juice and formula. I hadn't had a quiet meal in weeks. One afternoon, I walked in and found Chelsea standing in front of the open fridge. "You should think about shopping in bulk," she said. "It's better for everyone when you're feeding more than one person." That night, I found a crumpled grocery bill on the counter, over $200. My bank statement showed the charge on my card. I hadn't bought a single item for myself. When I brought it up to my mom, she sighed. Emma, stop being selfish. Your brother is struggling. You can carry a little extra, can't you? I've been carrying extra since I was 16. She ignored the comment, changed the subject. I started to unravel slowly. I couldn't focus at work. I forgot appointments. I flinched when my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize myself in the bathroom mirror some mornings. Pale, eyes dull, always tired. The only place that still felt mine was a small folder tucked inside my bag. Printed pay stubs, apartment listings, copies of my lease agreement. I started carrying them around like talismans, like proof that I existed outside of this suffocation, that I still had choices. One night I came home late, dropped my bag on the sofa, and heard Marcus complaining. Emma forgot the detergent again. How are we supposed to do Parker's laundry? I stood in the kitchen doorway watching him scroll on his phone legs stretched across the coffee table. You could buy some, I said quietly. He looked up surprised. Why, you always do. And that was the truth. I always did. Later, I sat on the couch wrapped in the blanket I'd once chosen for its softness. I stared at the espresso machine on the counter, polished unused by me, just another symbol of what mattered. I'd never once made myself coffee with it. It wasn't mine, even though I paid for the water that ran through at the counter. It sat on the electricity that powered it. They didn't need to scream to break me. They didn't need to hit or insult or abandon. They just had to assume I would stay quiet, that I would always give more, ask, less, disappear politely behind my own generosity. And for too long they were right. The first time I heard it, I wasn't supposed to be home. I'd left work early after a late client cancellation and entered the apartment quietly, too tired to announce myself. I stood in the entryway just out of view, listening to Marcus and my mom talk in the living room. He was lounging on the couch, flipping through his phone while she folded Parker's clothes beside him. Don't worry, she said softly. I'll just take half of Emma's rent again this month and send it to you. Think of it as remote support. Marcus laughed like it was a private joke between them. Perfect. At least someone in this house gets it. I stayed frozen by the door, one hand still holding my keys. The words weren't shouted, weren't even said cruelly, but they landed with a kind of weight I didn't know how to carry. I backed away quietly and walked into the kitchen, pretending I had just arrived, dropping my bag on the floor with a forced thud. They didn't look up. That night, I lay on the sofa, unable to sleep, staring at the ceiling fan above me. My mind looped the conversation over and over. Half of my rent. Not all of it, not something obvious. Just half quiet enough to go unnoticed, consistent enough to drain me. I started thinking back. The bills that didn't match the usage. The odd hesitations when I asked about where the extra money was going. The way my mother had deflected, smiling and saying, "You know how family is." The next morning, while Chelsea took Parker out for a walk and Marcus was in the shower, I walked into the kitchen and found my mom's phone charging on the counter. It was unlocked. She never thought to put a passcode on it. Why would she? I was the trustworthy one. I picked it up. My heart was steady. I wasn't nervous. I was tired. The thread with Marcus was right at the top. I clicked it open. The most recent message was from him. Can you send $400 this week? Chelsea found a high chair she likes at Target, the one with the adjustable tray. A minute later, another text followed. Oh, and if Emma asks, just say it's for plumbing repairs. I scrolled further up. There were months of messages, transfers, jokes, comments about me. She won't notice. She never does. It's just rent she has more than enough. We'll make it up to her someday. There it was, laid out plainly. No hesitation, no guilt. Just a steady stream of taking. I set the phone back down and walked out of the room. No one noticed I'd touched it. That night, I made tea and sat in the far corner of the living room, knees tucked under a blanket that no longer smelled like home. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the fridge and Parker's baby monitor, which Marcus had left on the coffee table. I opened my laptop and clicked on the folder I hadn't touched in months. Freedom. It was still there, buried beneath project files and invoices. I opened it. Inside were screenshots of apartments, budget projections, scanned copies of my pay stubs. I'd built this folder during a different kind of exhaustion when I was still in school, still pretending I could make it all work if I just tried hard enough. Back then, I thought the folder would be for some future plan. Now I knew it was for survival. I started searching. Small units, no roommates, no shared walls if I could help it. Quiet safe, close enough to the office that I could walk if the buses failed. I wasn't looking for charm. I was looking for clarity. As I clicked through listings, I thought about every excuse they had given me. That family shares, that I should be proud to support them, that Marcus just needed time, that babies change everything. Each phrase echoed in my head like a dull, knock-worn-out words that used to sting but now just sounded hollow. I thought about the months I had paid on time without fail and never once questioned where the money was going. About the groceries that disappeared, the utilities that doubled the raised rent that came without warning the moment I got a raise. I remembered the day I got the promotion and how my mom smiled not with joy but with relief, as if I had just increased their monthly allowance. They hadn't needed to lie, they just needed me to keep being quiet. I opened my banking app. The rent history was there in perfect sequence, every month, on time, without a missed payment. I took screenshots of the last 12 transactions and saved them into the folder. Then I opened my notes app and started documenting what I had seen on the phone, the messages, the dates, the exact phrases. Not because I planned to confront them not yet, but because I needed to hold the truth somewhere. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about what they saw when they looked at me. A resource, a buffer, someone too obedient to object, too tired to stop. I had been convenient for so long that they stopped seeing me as a person. Around midnight, I closed my laptop and stared at the ceiling again. I could hear Parker crying faintly in the next room. The baby monitor clicked on and off, filling the room with soft static. The espresso machine blinked quietly on the counter. No one had touched it that day. I wrapped the blanket tighter around me. It felt thin now, stretched too far. In the morning, I would tour the first apartment. I hadn't told anyone. I wouldn't. Because the people who taught me to stay silent never expected I'd learn how to leave. And this time, I wouldn't give them a chance to ask why. The lease was signed on a Tuesday morning. The landlord, a retired nurse named Mrs. Bell, handed me the papers with a quiet smile. She lived in the unit downstairs and only asked 2 things: no loud music and no unexpected guests. I promised her she wouldn't have to worry about either. The apartment was small, a 1-bedroom on the 3rd floor of a modest brick building on the quieter side of Milwaukee. But when I walked through it for the first time, something inside me unclenched. There was no clutter, no baby toys, no voices echoing from behind thin walls, just space and silence. I hadn't felt that in years. I didn't tell anyone, not my parents, not Marcus, not even Grandma. I kept the news sealed in my chest like a secret that might vanish if spoken too soon. At night, I'd pack quietly while everyone else was asleep. I started with the small things, books, files, my clothes folded into neat rows. I avoided anything that wasn't mine. The espresso machine, the crib, the pile of baby shoes in the corner, they weren't mine. I had paid for the space they lived in, but I wouldn't take a single piece of it with me. Each night, after packing a little more, I'd open the Freedom folder on my laptop and cross off another task. Change of address filed, utilities scheduled to cancel, mail forwarding activated. My hands moved with calm precision as if they'd been waiting for this moment all along. The night I left the apartment was quiet. Too quiet. Parker had finally slept through the night and Marcus was passed out on the couch, still wearing headphones. Chelsea had gone to bed early. I moved carefully, rolling my suitcases across the living room floor like I was handling something fragile. In a way, I was. I paused at the fridge. A yellow sticky note sat curled at the edges. My mother had left it 2 days ago, reminding me that the rent was due Friday and Marcus might need help picking up groceries. I peeled it off and replaced it with my own. I had written it the night before, just 2 lines: don't look, don't call, don't expect. I stood there for a second, letting the silence hold me. Then I turned off the kitchen light, grabbed my bags, and stepped out the front door for the last time. It was 2:10 a.m. The air outside was sharp, the sidewalks damp from a passing drizzle. My breath fogged as I walked to the curb, rolling the suitcases behind me. There was no taxi waiting. I hadn't called one. I walked the 8 blocks to my new place, each step heavier with the weight of everything I wasn't taking with me. I didn't feel afraid. I didn't feel sad. I felt finished. When I reached the building, I pulled out the key Mrs. Bell had given me. It was tucked into a plain white envelope marked with my name in blue ink. I slid it into the lock, turned, and stepped into a hallway that smelled like lavender and floor wax. The stairs creaked slightly under my feet. When I reached the door at the end of the third floor, I paused. Just for a second. Then I pushed it open. The apartment greeted me with stillness. I left my bags by the door and walked into the small kitchen, flicking on the light. The countertop was clean, the cabinets empty. The fridge hummed steadily, waiting to be filled. I opened the window and let in the night air, then sat on the floor back against the wall, knees pulled to my chest. No baby monitor, no text messages, no one asking for anything. The next morning, my phone buzzed at 8:04. It was my mother. "Emma, just a reminder, rent is due today. Marcus is planning to take Parker to the pediatrician, and we still need to send in the payment for the heating bill. Let me know when it goes through." I stared at the message. I didn't feel anger, only clarity. I typed slowly, choosing each word like a brick in a wall. "Maybe you haven't realized. I moved out last night. You won't be receiving another cent. Not today, not next month, not ever." I hit send. The phone rang almost immediately. I didn't pick up. Another ring. Then another. I let them all go to voicemail. Minutes later, another text came through, half pleading, half accusing. "Emma, don't do this. Your brother's family is going through a hard time. We didn't tell you because we knew you'd overreact. We needed time to get back on our feet." I blocked the number. Then I blocked Marcus. Then Chelsea. Then anyone else who might forward me a guilt trip disguised as a family update. I didn't block Grandma. She had never asked for anything. She had simply existed in the margins, a silent witness to all the things I endured. I figured if she needed to reach me, she'd find a way. That afternoon, I unpacked. Slowly. A few dishes. A set of fresh bed sheets I'd ordered weeks ago but never opened. A single coffee mug. I filled the fridge with only what I liked, Barry's oat milk sharp cheddar cheese. I made a list of groceries not for anyone else, just for me. I spent my first night lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, realizing I didn't have to listen for someone else's baby, or Marcus's late-night TV, or my mother's footsteps walking down the hall to ask for one more thing. There was only the quiet rhythm of my breath and the low hum of the heater working just as it should. I hadn't shouted, I hadn't screamed, I hadn't explained myself at all. I had just stopped paying. And for the first time in years, no one could tell me I owed them anything. The apartment still smells faintly like vanilla from the candle I light every evening. It's not a big space, just over 500 square feet, but it's clean, warm, and mine. The walls are a soft cream, the kitchen tiles a little uneven, but I love them. I know where every draft comes from, where the light hits best in the morning, and which floorboard creaks when I'm up too late. There's a framed quote above my small desk that says, "You don't have to be loud to leave." I found it at a used bookstore a few weeks after moving in, and it felt like someone had written it just for me. It's been 7 months since I left. I wake up earlier now, not because I have to, but because I want to. My mornings start with coffee in a chipped ceramic mug I bought from a local market. I sit by the window watching the street below come alive in quiet waves, footsteps, dog leashes, clicking buses sighing at the corner. No one asks me for anything. No one interrupts me mid-sentence or mid-thought. I make my own breakfast. I shop for one. I don't have to hide my snacks in the back of a crowded fridge. I've started my MBA part-time, something I never imagined I'd do. At first, I enrolled just to see if I could handle it. I thought maybe it would be too much, that maybe I had burned myself out too badly to start again. But something shifted. The more I studied, the more I realized how much I still wanted to build a life that belonged to me, with choices that weren't filtered through guilt. My classes are online, mostly in the evenings, which leaves my days free to work from home and take on project contracts. I've grown comfortable with spreadsheets, market analyses, things most people find boring. But to me, numbers are comforting. They don't lie, they don't twist, and they don't pretend to care, only to take. A few weeks ago, I was invited to speak at a nonprofit that supports women in financial recovery. They found an essay I had posted online anonymously about my experience budgeting and setting boundaries. I didn't share all the details. I didn't name names. I just talked about the moment I realized helping people shouldn't mean losing yourself in the process. The director emailed me and asked if I'd consider speaking as part of their series called Standing Up After the Shadows. I said yes without hesitating. Not because I felt healed or perfect, but because I finally knew what it meant to speak from truth rather than trauma. When I stood on that small stage in the community center downtown, I wasn't nervous. The room was filled with women of all ages, most of them listening in quiet stillness. I told them about how silence sometimes grows so loud it buries your own voice, how being the responsible one doesn't mean you have to carry everyone else's choices, and how walking away doesn't mean you're cruel. It means you finally understand the cost of staying. Afterward, 3 women came up to thank me. One had tears in her eyes. Another held my hand and said, "I thought it was just me." That moment stayed with me longer than I expected. It reminded me that the pain I carried wasn't rare. It was just hidden, dressed in politeness and family dinners and doing what's right. Sometimes the most damaging debts aren't financial, they're emotional. My grandmother called last week. I hadn't spoken to her much since I left. Not because we were on bad terms, but because I needed the space. When I answered, her voice was soft, almost hesitant. "Emma," she said, "I just wanted to let you know. Things aren't going well over there." She didn't need to say where there was. I knew. She told me Marcus and Chelsea were struggling, money-tight bills piling up. My mother had started borrowing from neighbors and old friends. People weren't picking up her calls anymore. "She says they wish you were still around," Grandma added quietly. "Says she didn't realize how much you were holding together." I listened without reacting. I thanked her for telling me, and then I changed the subject. There was no part of me that felt vindicated. I didn't feel joy or revenge, just a strange sort of stillness, like standing at the edge of something and choosing not to look back. That evening, I printed out the new version of my Freedom folder. It wasn't just budget sheets anymore. It held outlines for workshops I wanted to teach, savings plans for women leaving controlling environments, and a 5-year plan I had been building piece by piece. The folder had started as a place to hide my escape. Now it held the structure of a life I chose. Logan, the man I met through my MBA cohort, asked me to come meet his family next weekend. We've been seeing each other slowly, no rushing, no pressure. He's kind in a quiet way. He listens. He never makes me feel small for having boundaries. And when I told him briefly that I left my family behind for good reason, he didn't pry. He just nodded and said, "That makes sense." When he asked me to visit his family home, I hesitated at first. Not because I was afraid, but because I wanted to be sure I was walking into it as myself, not as someone explaining her absence, not as someone needing to justify her decisions. "Don't expect anything," he said with a smile. "Just come if you want to. They're not perfect, but they're kind." I told him I'd think about it, and now, standing here in my kitchen with my mug warming my hands and the sunlight creeping over the sill, I know my answer. I'm not going back to who I was, the girl who made herself small to stay useful, the one who was easy to lean on, easier to ignore. That girl was brave in her own way. She survived everything. But this woman, she's something else. She wakes early and walks with her own rhythm. She speaks when she wants to. She leaves when she needs to. She knows that peace isn't given, it's claimed. And in this small apartment with its cracked tiles and soft light, I've claimed mine. Emma's story is not about revenge. It's about reclaiming space in a world that tried to shrink her. For years, she gave without question, carrying burdens that were never hers to hold. She was the quiet one, the dependable one, the one everyone leaned on but never truly saw. And when the weight became too heavy, she didn't shout, she simply walked away. Through solitude, she found clarity. Through distance, she found strength. In the silence they left her with, she built something steady, something her own. This story is a reminder that you don't need permission to choose yourself. You don't need to prove your worth to people who've already decided not to see it. You only need the courage to begin again, even if it starts quietly. If this story spoke to you, we invite you to like, comment with your thoughts, or subscribe to hear more stories of quiet strength and hard-won freedom.